This is the next chapter in the quest for the White Merle. Chapter the 6th. Minote. Boom! 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 It was such an alarming sound that Conrad woke at once. He had been sleeping on a mountain slope above a tract of marshland, and his long flight had so wearied him that for 24 hours he had not winked an eyelash. Boom! 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 The formidable notes were coming nearer, and he struggled to his feet. It was some new danger, he felt sure. And where was Gladheart? Gladheart was sitting a short distance away from him, on a bush of flaming red azalea, and twittering with perfect unconcern. Twilight had already silvered the deep blue peaks to the north and the south, and the sun threw a wreath of rose-coloured glory over the gleaming snow crown of Fujisan, standing tall and splendid in her serene loveliness. But Conrad had no eyes just now, even for the most beautiful mountain in the world. His gaze was fixed on the curious bird that soared towards him, uttering those deep-voiced booms that had disturbed his rest. He was not unlike a heron, but his plumage was long and loose, instead of smooth and compact, and his neck was short. As he rose for the air, he boomed repeatedly, and the glossy feathers on the crown of his head gleamed with the lustre of an emerald. With a sudden sweep he alighted beside Conrad, and surveyed him leisurely from head to foot. "I bid the honourable stranger welcome to Japan," he said with stately dignity. "I am Go-i-Sahi, a bittern of the 5th grade, as my great-great-grandfather was before me. Worthless as I am, and unfit to converse with your honourableness, I would have you know that I, and I only, have thus been ranked for centuries by the Japanese." He finished with a deep bow, and Conrad, making an effort not to smile, bowed low in return. The bittern next considered Gladheart, who had with much prudence sought the shelter of a pink camellia's glossy leaves. "The bird belongs to your honourableness?" questioned Go-i-Sahi. "If you sell him in Tokyo," he went on, "you will gain much money, for birds such as he in this country are greatly esteemed. They are brought from Korea, and only the Japanese nightingale, the famed Uguisu, is dearer to buy." "Sell Gladheart?" cried Conrad indignantly. Fortunately for that bittern of the 5th grade, there was no book at hand to throw at him. "Why, I would as soon sell my wings. He is my best bird friend, after Barney, of course." "Your honourableness is very gracious," returned the bittern with a deep boom that sent Gladheart right into the heart of the bush. This want of confidence in his good faith so angered Go-i-Sahi that he fluffed out his feathers until he was twice his usual size. Conrad quickly changed the subject by an admiring reference to Fujisan. "It is nothing," the bittern answered, with a wave of his foot that showed off his long middle toe. But his eyes glistened, and Conrad knew he had said the right thing. Wishing to gratify him, and honestly enraptured with the beauty of the flaming azaleas that set the slopes on fire, he remarked on their exquisite colour. The bittern was pleased, and settled himself for a chat. "An honourable stranger once called our country a land of mountains and fragrant bloom. This was well said. If you had come a little later, you would have found lilies, as well as azaleas, and the coral pink berries of the japonica gleaming at you from every side. Down in the valleys are groves of orange trees, and the blossoms of many fruits make the gardens lovely. Camphor and mulberry trees grow here as well, and a curious vegetable wax tree. with oaks and conifers and graceful tree ferns. Our mountain slopes are a dream of beauty. Do you live on the mountains, Goisagi? Asked Conrad as the Bittern stopped for breath. I live in the marshlands, the bird replied, and all day long I sleep in the rushes. In the night I sing as I hunt for my food, frogs and lizards and water insects. Sometimes, perhaps, more birds. Your Honourableness heard my poor song just now. What did you think of it? Conrad looked round desperately. He hated saying what was not true, and, on the other hand, he did not wish to hurt Goisagi's feelings. Tell him that he has a powerful voice, came in a soft twitter from Gladheart. Goisagi accepted the compliment gracefully. I will leave the honourable stranger now, he said, for I hear the croaking of many frogs by the deep pools. They make night hideous with discordant sounds. Poor things, they know no better. Why do you call me honourable? Asked Conrad. I hope I am. Father says that honour is the salt of the earth, but I don't see why you should talk about it every other moment. You may be honourable, or you may not, said Goisagi shortly. But it is the custom of the country so to address strangers. And shall I, a bittern of the 5th grade, be wanting in good breeding? No. And he puffed out his feathers scornfully, preparing to depart. Conrad detained him a moment to speak of the white merle. Goisagi boomed discouragingly. He had heard of no such creature. You might talk to the mandarin duck, he vouchsafed. He is a very gay bird and keeps fine company. Or perhaps an owl would know. Conrad was glad to hear there were owls in the mountains, and set off at once to seek one. It was dusk now, but the kindly and gracious moon was smiling down upon them, and he had no fear of the dark shadows that lurked in the rocky chasms. Crystal waterfalls tossed and tumbled down the sides of deep ravines, and far away he could see the crest of foam that marked the shore. Why don't you too hoo if you want an owl? Suggested Gladheart. So Conrad imitated Barney's deep voice as best he could. His call was answered at once, and out of a gloomy cavern where she had slept all day sailed a brisk little owlet with 2 small tufts of hair on either side of her head and large green beads of eyes. She stared at Conrad for several seconds, and then in a gentle, friendly fashion that would have won the confidence of a mouse, flew on his shoulder and rearranged a plume that the wind had ruffled. Your Honourable Highness, she began, but Conrad stopped her, for he had had enough of this from Goisagi. Just talk to me as if I were one of yourselves, he urged. I should like it so much better. The little owl left his shoulder and found a footing on the branch of a jagged pine. I have heard of you from the night wind, she said, and the friend of one owl is the friend of all. I am Minotaur, and if I can win your favour, I shall indeed be glad. That's a beautiful white feather on the top of your left wing. It was Barney's, said Conrad proudly, and here on my right is one that was given me by a little brown owl like yourself. I knew it, said Minotaur, her bright green eyes shining as if someone had lit twin lamps behind them. Owls have a very wide range and are found all over the world. There are the snowy owls of the Arctic regions, and tawny owls and eagle owls and many others besides. You are sure to meet some of these on your wanderings. Tell them, I pray of you, that Minotaur sends them greeting. Would the Honourable... Pardon me, I forgot your wish. Would the friend of Barney, the big white owl, care to look at Minotay's poor little home. Then come with me. Gladheart hid himself a little more closely beneath Conrad's feathers as they entered the rocky cavern where Minotay made her nest. He did not think it right to put temptation in the way of any bird, and owls had curious tastes. It was very dark, but a ray of light stole through a fissure in the rocks and fell full on the nest, a heap of small hard pellets composed, though Conrad did not know it, of bones and skins that Minotay had been unable to digest and so had thrown up in these little balls. Her baby owlets were soft and downy, and Conrad lifted one against his cheek. He was rewarded by a sharp peck, which made him hastily replace it in its nest. Minotay gave a soft little chuckle of amusement as she flew outside again, and took up her old perch on the pine tree that guarded the entrance to the cave. Fujisan's crown was radiant now with 1,000,000 stars. Minotay's eyes followed Conrad's as they rested on it in awe-struck silence. "The Storm King told me the story of Fujisan," she murmured, staring solemnly at the summit of the silvery cone. "Thousands of years ago," he said, "Fujisan was angry and threw out streams of melted rock and terrible tongues of fire, while she darkened the sky with the stifling smoke that poured from her angry mouth. The noise of the thunders frightened the birds so much that they could not sing, and desolation spread far and wide. In vain the Storm King let loose his winds upon her. She heeded them not, and her wrath was very terrible. At last the sun god himself besought her to stay her anger, for her smoke clouds hid the blue of his sky and soiled his morning robes of rose and hyacinth. His glance was so tender and his touch so warm that Fujisan could not withstand his caresses. Her thundering ceased, and she became as gentle and still as a young girl on the eve of her bridal. Though she is a goddess of fire, for deep within her it burns and throbs. To outward seeming she is as calm and radiant as you see her now. Each day at dawn the sun god visits her. He tells her that none are more beautiful to him than she. Though thousands of years have come and gone since first he wooed her." "What else did the Storm King say to you, Minotay?" Conrad asked. "Things far too wonderful to speak of," she replied. "That our beautiful islands are just the tips of a chain of mountains, that some great earthquake buried deep in the sea, and that long ago, before this happened, Japan was joined to other lands." "Did he ever tell you of a white merle?" Conrad inquired anxiously, looking up at Minotay from the soft bed of moss he had found to rest on. "Never," she said. "But once I heard a brambling twitter to his mate about a sweet-voiced bird in a gilded cage belonging to a little old woman on the island of Enoshima. So poor is this little old woman that sometimes the brambling said she cannot afford herself even a morsel of rice. But the sweet-voiced bird has always enough to eat, and though many would buy it, she will not sell. It was the gift of her only son, who sleeps on the breast of the sea." "Then I will go to Enoshima," said Conrad hopefully. But he lingered a while, for the night was fair, and Minotay kept him company. Faint streaks of light quivered across the sky, when at last he bade the little owl farewell. The twitter of songbirds, low at first, rose from every valley and lofty peak, as Minotay flitted back to the dimness of her cave. Queer little monkeys uncurled themselves from their roosting places amidst the trees, and chattered excitedly as Conrad flew over their heads. A mountain fox trotted sedately down a narrow track, some telltale feathers hanging round his mouth, and the cry of a golden eagle came sharp and clear across the heights. It was morning again, and Conrad's hopes rose high. Except for the wealth of green on the mountainside and the purple depths of the valleys, he might have been still in England. for the call of the cuckoo fell on his ear as it had done at home, and he could hear the tapping of woodpeckers amongst the trees. Little brown larks trilled gladly as ever beyond the roaring waterfalls, and a swallow chirped a brisk "Good day." Conrad was delighted to meet her. He loved all swallows, and the nests in the eaves of his bedroom window were left there from year to year. She was as pleased to see him as Minute had been, and showed him with happy pride the two little pouches under her tongue where she stored the flies that she had caught in her rapid flight for her young ones. When he spoke of visiting Enoshima, she gave a wise little nod. "I have heard of that wonderful bird," she said, "and you do well to seek it. If you do not find your white merle there, I will send word among my comrades, for swallows fly in many lands, and when you least expect it, help may come." Conrad thanked her, and when she left him he felt that he had lost a friend.